All right, good evening. Welcome to the August 22nd meeting of the Berlin Board of Education. We are going to call this meeting to order with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we begin our meeting, I'd like to start out with a moment of silence for two people within the Berlin school community that have recently passed away. We have Tony Salella, who is a head custodian of Willard and a Berlin resident. Do you have anything you'd like to add?
Tony was the head custodian at Willard for a number of years. Tony was the guy that was there at 5:30 in the morning that teachers came and had coffee with. He was part of the fabric of Willard School. We had a little gathering of all the custodians and town workers last Friday as a recognition of Tony and all they did for Berlin Public Schools. So Tony will be severely missed. Just a great person.
And the other that we'll include in our moment of silence is Chase Anderson, the Berlin High student who just passed away over the weekend. I don't know if you'd like to share anything else, but our condolences go out to his, family, friends, and anyone impacted by this horrible tragedy.
I didn't know Chase personally, but in speaking to teachers and administrators, the message given was that Chase was a charismatic young man, full of life and energy, loved to socialize with others, and that he'll be severely missed. I know that from speaking to teachers, going back to the elementary school, that they remember Chase and remembered him fondly. So our heart and prayers go out to the family.
All right, so we are going to begin the meeting this evening. We're going to open it up with committee reports. Do we have any committees that have a report? Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, so the Finance and Operations Committee met on Friday with the couple of topics that we talked about was cafeteria pricing, which we're going to go into more detail on later. We also had a look at the end-of-year financial report, which I think we're also going to be chatting about a little bit later. We had a $2,400 surplus that we give back to the town, so another good job of budgeting this year. And then we talked a little bit about facilities and the summer maintenance and a lot of the work that was going on throughout the district on projects and things at our schools. So a lot of excellent progress made on a lot of the buildings, and everything was looking good. So hopefully it gets us to the point later on where the superintendent can tell us that we're ready to open the schools.
Great, thank you. Any other committee reports? All right, moving on to correspondence of the board.
No correspondence to the board this evening.
Thank you. Audience of citizens. Members of the Berlin community are encouraged to share their thoughts with the Berlin Board of Education and are invited to do so during this moment of time. If you would like to address the board, you can come to the microphone, state your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes. All right. I don't see anyone approaching the board, so moving on. Consent agenda. Do we have a motion for consideration?
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Do we have a second?
Second.
So the motion by Adam, the second by Matt. Any discussion on the consent agenda? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The vote carries 6-0. Moving on to new business, the superintendent's report, the district readiness opening plan for schools.
We are ready to open school. We hired our last staff member, our last teacher, on Sunday via Zoom. We had a special education position open at Berlin High School. Very fortunate to have a teacher that needed to relocate at the last minute. The teacher was at convocation today, so that's our last certified position. We do have, and if I didn't say this, Linda would not be happy with me, but we do have a number of para positions that we have not been able to fill at this time. I believe we have 8 at this time that we have not been able to fill, that we're working to fill. But as far as the readiness of the buildings, We met with the custodians on Friday. Jeff has done an outstanding job of monitoring the custodians, meeting with them, putting new head custodians in place. I can say that the buildings look fantastic. Having probably 100 superintendents at the high school for the commissioner's welcome back, as well as the governor, the compliments were numerous about how nice the high school looks and how clean it's kept. But beyond that, the buildings overall across the district look great. With the one piece that we're still waiting on to update the board is the YMCA utilizing a classroom at Hubbard, and then the build out at McGee to utilize the classrooms there. We are still waiting for completion. The hope is by the end of the week, Hubbard will be online by next week, and the hope is within the next 2 weeks that McGee will be complete. It's been some delays with the contractors, as well as there was asbestos found at McGee that had to be abated. But the hope is that we have those two programs going to also within the week. So we're ready to go.
Thank you. Staffing update?
I think I kind of
Covered
included
that,
that in the we did have a great convocation today. It was wonderful to see all the staff in the auditorium, a lot of energy. Compliments to Tyler Boyle, the vocals, and Chris Dresco with the band. The students also put on a little skit at the beginning that was definitely entertaining for everyone. But it was nice to see everyone together and a sense of normalcy and a sense of energy. People seem to come back recharged. So we're looking forward to a great year.
Thank you. Moving on to the financial report, 2021-2022 fiscal year.
Hello. The past year was not without its financial challenges. The general fund bore the burden of inflation, discrepancies in the supply chain, and unexpected increases in utilities. I issued a budget freeze in the third quarter, suspending non-essential spending in all departments and buildings. Desired projects and purchases had to be put on hold. Fortunately, savings were realized in some of our operational categories at the end of the year. Benefit expenditures were less due to the unemployment credit carried over from the previous fiscal year, as well as savings in the pension account. Savings in the transportation account resulted from no longer needing a Type 3 lift bus, a reduced rate for bus monitors, and a reduction in the number of student days. There was also a savings in tuition from receiving more excess cost funds than we had anticipated. Savings were reallocated to the certified salaries account to offset the negative balance the district carried throughout most of the year. Funds were used in contracted services to prepay software systems cut from the current year's budget. Money was also transferred to equipment, which is historically underfunded, to purchase technology for computer labs in the middle and high school, classroom furniture in the middle school, and custodial equipment. Finally, savings were also transferred to all other expenditures to resurface gym floors in all buildings, clean the ductwork at Griswold Gymnasium, and other minor updates to facilities throughout the district. The general fund closed with an uncommitted balance of $2,401.69 for final adjustments.
Any questions for Ashley? The report has been posted, but questions or comments for the board discussion? Thank you for your detailed report. Very well prepared.
No questions, Ashley, but I know how challenging it was, so good job.
I think it's also important you highlighted that you suspended spending and put forth a freeze in the third quarter. I think that's very important to show the efforts that we are making. Okay, moving on to school lunch pricing. Would you like to talk a little bit about that?
We met with the F&O committee, and for the last 2+ years here, we've been working on the federal government supplementing the lunch program, where all students are eligible for free lunch daily. This year, the funding for that we expect to run out of funding somewhere in December. So we decided to make the last date would be just before winter break would be the last date that all students are eligible for free lunch. At that point, we'll go back to students having to qualify for free and reduced lunch. We have not had a pricing increase since 2019. And speaking with the F&O committee, we thought that at this time, given that parents have had the ability to have free lunch, universal free lunch, and the state of the economy, that it would not be the right time to have an increase in our lunch prices. So the recommendation by the F&O committee was that we maintain the pricing that we've had since 2019, which is the same pricing that parents were used to 2 years ago. And Ashley, I don't know if you want to add to that further, but
I could go over smart funding if you'd like.
if you like, sure.
So Brian covered a lot of it, I'm just gonna move over here. As he said, we haven't had a price increase, actually since 2017-18.
Thank you.
So if you can come to the, so we're gonna hold it steady at the $2 for breakfast and lunch at the middle and high school, and $1.55 for breakfast, rather not breakfast and lunch, at the elementary school. And for lunch, $3.40 at the high school, $3.10 at the middle school, and $2.80 at all elementary schools. So this year, we're getting smart funding, which is, if you look to the next slide. So what smart funding is, it's the state of Connecticut received $30 million in funding to help the Keep Kids Fed Act. So really what it's gonna do, it's gonna help us get to the federal reimbursement rate. So our goal here is to always get, for every lunch that's going through the line, lunch or breakfast, to match that federal reimbursement rate. So if you are a free student, the reimbursement rate for breakfast is $2.26, and for lunch it's $4.33. So the federal government is going to continue to reimburse us a portion of each meal. So the way it's going to work for this year, the federal reimbursement for reduced price lunches for breakfast is $1.96, and then 30 cents is going to be coming from our smart funding. The district has a total allocation of smart funding of $257,041.12. That is based off of our free and reduced population from 2018-19 school year, plus $3,000 for each facility that operates a lunch program or meal program. So again, the goal is always to get the federal reimbursement rate, which is that yellow number highlighted for you on the screen. Once we exhaust all of our smart funding, then we will kick over to the paid programming that most students are, or most families are used to. So if you advance the next slide, so a big part of it is the free and reduced. So the more free and reduced students you have, the longer the smart funds will last. We do see a trend going in our free and reduced population. We're up to 23.1% of our total population for free and reduced as of June 30th, which is a 6% increase from the 18-19 school year. If you advance again, so our smart funding, we're anticipating 71 days, and that's based off of the lunch data that we received from the 21-22 school year. Basically, it's the daily participation rate rather. So a majority of the free and reduced price population are free students, so that's why the reduced numbers may look a little low to you. We do have a lower reduced price population, and then of course we have our normal, our regular paid lunch students rather. Breakfast participation is typically low. That seems to be, most districts have that as well, and then a majority of our funding is coming through the lunch. So 71 days will bring us to approximately the middle of December.
Just one note, so if the funding runs out in mid-December, we've announced that we will fund lunches for students until December break. And then coming back in January, people will have to qualify as they had in the past for free or reduced lunch. So what we'll use is we have a cafeteria account. We'll use those funds if needed for that short term to fund the lunches. If it's we're 2 days late, a week short, that's how we plan to fund that.
Any questions?
So I just have a question, because obviously new to this, although it seems like this funding is obviously new to this year. So this SMART fund is different than the funding that for the past last year that was taken care of, right? The federal government.
So it's part of the ARP ESSER funds.
Okay.
It's an additional allocation to what the federal government gave us last year.
So is that why it's not listed under, like, any of the, it doesn't have its own, like, line item on the,
No, so
grants?
the way it's gonna work, it's actually through the cafeteria fund. The reimbursement
Okay.
will go back as a accounts receivable in the cafeteria account is where you're gonna see that. So it's not a grant in that sense that you'd see in your regular grant report.
okay.
Actually, can you speak to when this money was released to us and we were allowed to allocate it this way?
So it was late. Beginning of August is when we really got some clear guidance on when we were going to get the funding and how the funding was going to work. It was kind of, everybody knew lunches would be free for a portion of the year, but most school districts didn't get anything specific from the state of Connecticut on how much we were getting or how these funds could be used. And again, this is only for meal prices. Any kind of a la carte, it won't count towards your federal reimbursement.
Is this something that's going to be, it won't be happening every year, I'm assuming, because it was part of COVID relief money? Is that what I'm to understand?
Correct. So this is the only year we will be getting, or we're anticipating only getting smart funds for this upcoming school year. That's why we're going to be switching to a paid program, and then moving forward for the 23-24 school year, it will be like any other year prior to the pandemic where kids are paying for lunch.
Thank you.
And just a quick comment, I know that during our F&O committee meeting, we talked about, again, raising prices, but because you've got funding running out in the middle of December, continuing at the same price through the balance of the school year, and then we'll probably look at pricing again next year for next school year, possibly increasing that because, again, it hasn't changed since 2018?
17-18, correct.
17, 18. Yep.
Yeah, the school lunch program remains pretty fluid. Like, even though we've been told that this is it, I really don't think that this is it because there's still a lot of pressure, not only on the federal government, but also on the state government to do something with universal feeding. I think that right now there's 15 states across the country that have simply adopted universal feeding as all students get free all the time, regardless of economic status. But this came from the state in order to help kind of bridge that transition back to perhaps being a paid program.
And Brian, notification will be going out to parents when about the conclusion of the free
The
meals?
notification will go out to parents probably tomorrow. I wanted approval from the board before you said that you approved.
So I need a motion for consideration.
I'll move to maintain the current pricing for meals for the 2022-2023 school year as follows. Breakfast, BHS and McGee, $2, and elementary schools, $1.55. Lunch, BHS, $3.40, McGee, $3.10, elementary schools, $2.80, and adult lunches, $4.50.
I'll second that.
So motion by Adam, second by Tim. I know we already had our discussion, but I will open it back up for discussion, comments, questions. Okay, moving to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Vote is 6-0. Now moving on to the vision of the graduate presentation.
Very happy to have Cara Watson and Lori Jerpin here this evening, our directors of curriculum. They're going to share a little bit about the vision of the graduate and what it means to Berlin Public Schools. Eileen is at the high school for an event, so she probably won't make it, but Eileen was a big part of it. But just before Lori and Cara start, they're going to share a little history about the vision of the graduate. But this is the document that will be used as kind of the unifying goals that are K-12. It's not just the graduate, it's what we're building upon each year, and I hope you'll see that within the presentation. So I'm going to turn over to Cara and Lori and let them get started. Please.
Brian said, we appreciate your time tonight. We really just want to take an opportunity to present this brief slideshow, to share a little bit about the history of the work we've been doing over the past few years to develop our vision of the graduate, and we're also going to speak about next steps with the work. So going back a few years now, actually 4 years, in the fall of 2018, we had our NEASC visit at Berlin High School, which some of you I'm sure remember. At that time, they came, they did their visit, met with a number of staff, toured the building, did a lot of background work, and then the following summer, 2019, they provided us with their report, which includes commendations and recommendations. And following that, in the fall of 2019, that report was actually presented to the Board of Education. Again, some of you were on at that time, so you may remember some pieces from that. At the time, their recommendations in the area of Vision of the Graduate actually focused on some of the existing documents we had and trying to have better alignment. So at the time of their visit, we actually had separate documents. We had some documents for the high school specifically that they designed. Their documents included a mission, core values and beliefs, and 21st century learning expectations, again, strictly for the high school. Then we also had a separate district document with learner outcomes. So one of their big recommendations had to do with merging and aligning all of this work. And then ensuring moving forward that our curriculum was purposefully designed to meet those expectations. And at the end of our presentation, we actually have an appendix and the specific recommendations are listed there, but we summarize them for you. So in 2020, NEASC actually came out with new standards that set an expectation for districts to have a written document that describes their core value, beliefs about learning, and vision of the graduate, and this is pre-K to 12. So that was really a big impetus for the work to bring all of this together. So going back to 2020-21, after having the report and recommendations, and of course the 2020 NEASC standards, we started doing some digging and working within the district. So one of the first things we did was we worked with a team of Berlin teachers and administrators and crafted some initial language for the mission statement, core values, and the beliefs about learning, which you should have a copy of that. There was a lot of work put into this with committees and wordsmithing. That's where we developed the purpose, passion, pride that we see all over district at this point. So that was one piece. Following the initial work, revisions were actually made based on survey results. So there was surveys done with staff, surveys done with students, and with parents. We represented all levels, grades 5, 8, and 10, so that elementary, middle, and high school were represented in the surveys. They also did some focus groups at the high school level with students. And then teams of teachers and administrators attended a Vision of the Graduate workshop to help gain some additional background and some support in crafting things. We re-examined the Berlin learner outcomes with input from all the stakeholders and defined our Vision of the Graduate and created our draft. And you also should have, I think, a copy of that on paper. And the draft you'll see has 6 buckets and some indicators underneath. And this past year, 2021-22, we dug a little further into our document. We didn't stop at just our 6 buckets, but we really started to look more closely at what does this actually look like in practice at our different levels. What you might see in pre-K to 2 is not what it looks like when you get to high school, right? So we actually worked with staff. We had some professional development time last year. Staff broke into groups and started working on a continua pre-K all the way to 12. And Lori will talk about that in a second. We had a lot of feedback from staff members, and we are continuing to work on this with them this year.
So what's displayed on there is what one of the, as Cara referred to them, buckets, so collaborating. And so when you take a look at it, it has some indicators underneath that further describe what we are expecting of our students in that area. And then across, we created a progression of what it looks like in each grade. So as students go along in their career, it's going to look different. The expectations are going to look different. So as an example, you might have a 6th to 8th grader who's not reaching the expectation that's outlined, and they're all written as I can statements, so students can do their own self-reflection. The teacher can go back and say, what do I need to do with my 6th to 8th grader to get them to the next? So everything's laid out there, parents can see it, students see it, teachers see it, we all know what's going on. So this is the part we just created and we're going to be doing some work with this year. The other thing that we're going to be doing this year is, so now that we're getting this presented to you, our Berlin learner outcomes, we still see them in a few offices, mine included, right? Because up until now, that has been our guiding document. But now, the vision of the graduate is what's going to be up. So we have to start making that replacement. This is a formal document that will then get out to everyone. We are going to work with the Continua and get that out to all staff. We were just talking about, when we could possibly do that, just so that we can have conversations. Teachers at their grade levels can say, is this okay? Because they may need to make some changes, because that's what we notice all of the time when we create things. We say, oh, we overshot here, or we didn't make it rigorous enough in another area. And then we're going to pull subgroups together. So what is this going to look like on our website? Where is it going to show up on the website? So we'll pull together groups of staff to do that. And then we're going to start thinking about curriculum connections, but that's at the very beginning stages at this point. And then we're going to ask teachers. Teachers in the past have asked, can we do some things to support this? So, for example, student-led conferences at the elementary level. If teachers are interested in that, that's something Cara and I will support and help them implement this year. And then as we continue to go, that's where we're going to dig deeper into our curriculum. So where do these pieces, what does it look like, and where does it attach inside our Atlas curriculum? We're also going to look for more opportunities for students. So we have some built in already. We have Capstone, we have Quest. What does that look like? Does this connect well with that? And yes, it does. Hint. And then we also have to look at our report cards again. We said that's not aligned with what we're doing. So this is just a continuous process that we'll continue to look at, reflect on, and revise our work as we move forward.
Do you want to speak to a moment? I know we have the, go back for a moment. Do you want to speak to McGee and the report cards, just so the board's aware that they're working on something for this year?
Sure. So we, Sal Urso has worked with a couple of different teams last year, and one of their leadership team under Sal's direction decided that they wanted to look at certain, what do you call them, Sal?
Just values.
So they identified certain values that they wanted to work on. As we all know, it's been kind of tricky getting kids back in after the pandemic, and middle school levels always tricky. So they're going to revise the report card this year to align with the vision of the graduate and those values. So they took the values and said, this is a great opportunity for us to then also pull in the language from the vision of the graduate. So it's just one more piece. It's also then going to separate those values from the academic grade that a student receives, right? So
there's going to be two, so for a specific science, you're going to get your grade, and then the values, it's going to be a separate comment?
there'll be multiple grades, and they're going to come up with a rubric of how to give feedback to students.
So it will be in addition, right, to the grade and that
So
part of the report
similar to
card?
what you see at elementary level, where you see work habits in a separate section, you'll have the values in a separate section.
You're taking me back a few years.
Well, and
I
a
know,
lot
I'm
of schools have been
anticipating you
going in that
remembering.
direction, right?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
A lot of schools, like a lot of districts have been implementing initiatives like that.
Yes, and that really does align with the vision of the graduate.
Yep.
Absolutely. We've actually been talking to some of our colleagues in different districts to
Yeah.
get some samples of work that's being done to help guide our work.
Because I think in my district, we started it about 3 years ago, and we haven't had any issues, no complaints, and it's just been really positive. A great way to move away from, the actual grade and focus on giving some more specific feedback to students and parents.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
And so this is really just our, as Brian said at the beginning, our guiding document. This is what we want parents to know, that this is what we're working on with our students on a daily basis.
And then just for your reference, those are the actual NEASC recommendations for this particular area. So thank you for letting us share this. This is important work. It is bringing our district together, pre-K to 12, around the same set of beliefs and values, and that's very important, that we're looking at the continuum all the way through. The high school has a big job, but it's not their job alone, and every level contributes to the work and what we produce with our students, and so this is very important that we're working with everybody.
And it was important that all staff contributed.
Yes. Thank you.
Questions?
And, any questions or comments?
Quick question. So I know that this is based on the recommendations that came out of the NEASC visit. Do you have to take this final product or this product as it stands and submit it to them?
Yes.
And is it, because obviously it's a living document, it's gonna be amended over time. So you show it to them in different stages, like here's where we're starting and here's where we're going?
So we send it to them now. As a matter of fact, Eileen gets an email every once in a while saying, where's revision of the graduate? And she's like, it's still in progress. So we will send them as it is now, and then NEASC constantly revisits and follows up with all different pieces, and every time that they follow up and ask questions, she sends out the information to them. So yes, they'll see it all. And then when they come back in 2026,
They'll be back. They actually will be back.
10 years, 10 years.
10 years.
The self-study will happen a year
I heard
before that.
NEASC is now doing K-12. Is that the direction we're going in, especially with this?
They are doing not just high school visits.
I
they do
just
visits
heard
I
that last
actually
week.
served on a middle school team this past winter.
Oh, okay,
So that was pretty interesting.
They've always done other visits.
okay.
It's just electing to. The big thing is the high school with the credibility of having accreditation. But they've always done middle school and even elementary schools that opt for that.
And the grading you said has not been determined yet, how you're going to actually determine whether a student fits the criteria or is passing, so to speak? How will that be determined in terms of the VOG? How will you?
so I think you're talking about the continuum.
Right.
And so we're going to, so teachers will look at that and see whether or not students can do this. So for example, pre-K to grade 2 under Collaborate, I can work with a partner or in a group to achieve a goal. So teachers are going to be able to look at a kindergartner and say, do they always have to work independently? Or can they be in a small group or even just with a partner and accomplish a goal? So that's how they'll look. So it's almost like a yes, no.
So a yes, no, but
At
all
this
of
point.
all of this criteria will be listed on the report card?
No,
Oh,
no.
okay, that's a lot.
Yeah. That would take a long time to fill
Yeah,
out.
okay.
No. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, so moving into our last agenda item is the superintendent evaluation and contract, and we will be going into executive session, inviting the superintendent. Do we have a motion to enter?
I will move to go into executive session to discuss a personnel matter, inviting the superintendent with the board.
Second?
Motion by Tim, second by Adam. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 6-0. We will be moving in. The members that are absent may be attending virtually, but we will see based on their availability. So We will not be coming back, correct? Well, we'll open it up and close out, but no need for,
Not to stay. No.
Nick does not
No,
need to
no,
stay.
no, stay for that.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for a wonderful meeting, and we are going to enter into executive session.